Okay, so I want to do a bit of a talk piece on, I guess, the current format of Yu-Gi-Oh! Because I feel like that a lot of other people talking about it aren't really brushing on the problem, I feel, with like Full Loss and Impulse and all that kind of stuff, right? And I just want to preface by saying I've only played the game for about 2 years. It's been about 2 years. I've got one regional top. Take it as you will, right? But I'm not an idiot, I don't think. So we can look at price as being an issue, sure, because, you know, expensive cards, we have expensive cards in our hobby, right? Like, I don't think any card should be over $50 Australian, and this is 128 American, which we'll get to that in a second, right? So I don't want to really put price into it, because people are going to buy the cards they're going to buy regardless. Hasn't stopped people before, right? And that's an issue, I think, because it probably should stop people, and then the card will probably go down with the whole supply and demand thing. If no one's demanding it, people have high supply, then the cards just drop, just so then people can get rid of them, right? Like, this is how you do it. Like, think of, like, end of the financial year sales, where they're just like, get rid of it all. We got too much for our stock for our end of year. Do it again, blah, 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 right? Or, like, when they just have too much of a product that no one wants. And they're just like, yeah, discount at 50%, right? And I think Yu-Gi-Oh! Cards should kind of fall into the same thing. But I think the big issue that we have with the Full Loss cards and stuff, and Impulse, especially coming out in the same set, which is kind of crazy, is that they are staple cards. Like, we could run into Deception being a problem because of how much it costs, right? But realistically, it runs in one deck, but it does run in the best deck, and it brought the best deck back into fruition. Because Snake Eyes was close to being dead there, but now you've got 3 more copies of Ash, right? Really, theoretically, you've got 3 more copies of Ash, and it's given the deck an Omni Negate that it hasn't had since the first iteration, which was the Baron Borreload version, right? And so you can call Desiree an Omni if you want to, but it's not the same. It's not the same. It doesn't really protect too much unless you drop an Imperm, right? It also comes in much later in the combo. But I think the real problem with cards like this and Impulse, I think it eradicates skill. And I think that's the biggest issue with these cards, outside of, like, the price point and the fact that, like, every deck has to play them. They have to play them because you don't have to be as good at the game now to do well, right? Like, this is a special summon negate from the hand at quick effect speed. The only thing I know that does that is, like, Caesar, which requires a bit of setup. 2 level 6 fiends, not exactly the easiest thing to do in most decks, right? And, like, Solemn Warning, but I think that's also just inherent summons, right? Which are a little bit better, but it pays life points, it's a counter trap, and you have to set it, right? But, so, what do I mean by it gets rid of the skill factor of the game, right? Yu-Gi-Oh! Yu-Gi-Oh! Is the most complicated card game out there, right? But that also makes it, in my mind, the most enjoyable and most fun, because I actually have to think about what I'm doing, right? When it comes to Magic, they have, like, a resource system with mana. When it comes to, like, One Piece, they've got the Dido cards or whatever in the back, which does the same thing as mana. The Star Wars game was the same. Digimon is just, like, it's just a child's game through and through. And then even what is it? I think Dragon Ball Z. It just feels like they're just like, oh, I stack card on top of card and then play. I played Lucana for a bit. I played Lucana as well. It's the same thing, just ink tapping and paying cost to pay for your cards, right? Which makes it seem like Yu-Gi-Oh! Doesn't have a resource, but the cards are the resource, right? Which makes resource management so much more important because our games are so much shorter than other card games where you can build up mana over time, then start doing crazy stuff because your opponent is on the same kind of clock as you, but they're also building up stuff and you really just play out of your hand a lot, right? But with Yu-Gi-Oh! Because your entire deck is practically available to you from the start if you open up just pretty much any kind of starter, you have to actually use your resources properly to not just neg your hand and do nothing to your opponent or end on nothing, because you can make pretty big mistakes in Yu-Gi-Oh! And your board state could just be like an IP with nothing to go into, set one and pass, because you messed up somewhere, right? Because the cards are the resources. And the reason why I think Full Loss is such a skill killer is because it lets you start with more cards in hand. For doing nothing, by the way. Like, the general consensus is that it's meant to deter big combo decks. But the problem that you have is that if someone Full Losses you and it's trying to deter you to end your turn early so you're not giving your opponent too much interaction, if they've drawn their starter and you haven't made a full board with your deck, you don't get to win this round, because they have their starter and they're playing into half a board, because the cards do too much, right? Which is inherently what this entire video is about, is how much can a card do? How much can a card plus before it's just considered too much, right? And Full Loss, in this case, it pluses more than any other card, because the moment you draw a starter with this, you've now just turned Full Loss into 8 more cards if it draws any level of starter, right? And I think this just comes down to like terrible card design, because you get the concept of it, of like, oh, you know, yeah, deter people from going like big wombo combos, right? But then they've made really powerful cards that can make really powerful boards on their own. But then they've got like board breakers which don't go 1 for 1. They go like you look at Harpy's Feather Duster or Lightning Storm or Evenly, they can go from 1 card to 6 cards to evenly being up to 11 cards if you have a full board. If you have 5 in the back row, 5 in the front row, a field spell, and an EMZ zone full, evenly just gets rid of 11 of those cards if you have no Omni or no way around it, right? And that's where it comes down to, how much can a card do before it's actually a problem? And I think most of our format is riddled with cards that do too much. Okay, I'm not even really going to talk about like Impulse, because Impulse is crazy, but it comes into something that I want to talk about later. Same with like Purge, because we're talking about card design, right? Actually, no, I will talk about it, screw it. Because this comes down to card design, and so we've got Impulse and Purge, right? And you can see the design on this where they're like, well, certain decks will only be able to play it, okay? But the issue that we have is that this got released in a time when Fire Dark is the strongest deck around, right? So that's the issue with these stable cards in general, is that they can be played by the best deck in the format and just get better. Sure, they help smaller rogue decks, but the better decks are already get better from it. They prosper from these stable cards, right? So we look at this term here, like they can activate the effects of light, earth, and wind. Why Snake Eyes and New Bell don't care? Tempire doesn't care, right? You can, other than like having to go first with seals, these 3 best decks in the format get to utilize this, and this is a crazy effect. Because the other one we have is this, which is Dark Water and Fire, which they can't use. It's a crappy Ash Blossom. Adds a card from the deck to the hand, negate that effect. Then if you have a trap in your card, destroy that. Trap in your graveyard, destroy that card. Ash Blossom is better than this. This stops you from using Ash Blossom. So you can't even pair this with Ash Blossom and just have like 6 Ash Blossoms. Right? You're locked out of it now. This is a better card. These should have been swapped around, right, to make this actually like decent for now. But the problem that we have is that we go into like a Ryziel Malice format later, right? And if the OCG is anything to look at, which it kind of can't be sometimes, because Snake Eye is still prevalent over there as well. Realistically, here over in the TCG, we want Snake Eye to drop dead. Same with Tempire. Tempire can go away as well. But we want Snake Eye to die. It's been too long now, right? But we look at Ryziel and Malice, right? We look at Ryziel and Malice, and they're all playing Impulse and Full Ross and stuff. But realistically, Ryziel can't play Impulse. So these hand traps actually become pretty prevalent in the next format, because if you look at the typings, right, Ryziel is Light and Fire, which means it can't use Purge, which means it can use... Oh no, it can't use either of them. It can't use Light or Purge. That's funny. But then Malice can use Impulse. But if the best decks in the format are Malice and Ryzeal, there's no point to maining Impulse in Malice, because Ryzeal just does nothing but inherent summons. Like, it's like Sprite, all of it's inherent, so you can't even use them. So this card design makes sense in a format coming up, not in what we have now. So now all of a sudden these broken decks now that end on a million negates get crazy stuff like this. And they can fix their hands with this and this. It's crazy. And then Deception's fine, we can get rid of that. Right? So, in my mind, right, if we go by my theory of these cards are skill killers because they just do too much, you're giving them to decks that already require very little skill to play, right? And I might get some crackback on that, or some backlash on that, because people might look at like Snake Eye and Ubel and be like, oh, they're really complicated decks. It's one line. It's one line that you have to learn, and either you get to the line or you don't get to the line. That's it. Like, you don't really have either or. There's no real skill there. Breaking your board, completely different. I think that there, in any deck besides Tempai, is where skill can come through. But because half your games are going to be played going first, and you're playing decks like that, because that's it. Like, so half the games that you play go first, and you build an FTK board because your one line has nothing but extension, and you just get to it because it's easy as all sin. And now with stuff like this and like input, like the Mold Charmies and Impulse, means that you just get to play with more cards in hand, or almost completely unabated in your entire combo to try and break board as well, which a lot of times is just break the board. If you can't find OTK, set up a board, pass turn when your opponent has nothing. And you just practically FTK'd him again, right? And that's the issue. It's just turning the game brain dead. We don't really have to think anymore, and we've already got Tempai for that. We don't need every deck in the format to be this brain dead stuff, right? So the argument is how much can a single card do before it's too much, right? And so I put together this thing, right? So I put together this to kind of just see how far one card can go into, like, where is too much. So we've got this is Snake Eye, Ubel, Tempai, and then I put in Rescue Ace just to kind of show like what I think a fair deck is, because I played a lot of Rescue Ace over the last year, and I've dueled against this. I played this to some degree, but not enough to really care, because I thought they were boring, because I just felt like they just kind of played themselves, right? Like, the older iterations with the more complicated board states were the more skillful ones, because you really had to think about playing around what your opponent could have, but in these days, it just does it all for you before you even get. Even with this here, I didn't include Fire King because they're kind of the same, but Fire King used to be more complicated than Snake Eye because you could outplay your opponent by holding off the Wanted and stuff, or the Witch lines, to get yourself back into Poplar, to get yourself into your Fire King stuff, which then just recycles all your stuff again, right, to get to your end board that you want to get to. But now with Deception, you're always just going to go the Wanted Witch line because it gets to an Omni Negate, or it baits out interaction. Then you just get to Ash anyway, or whatever, you know what I mean? Like, it just doesn't really matter. So these are all the starters in the Snake Eye. So it's 3 Wanted, 3 Witch, 3 Deception, 1 Ash, 3 Bonfire, 1 Poplar. That's all I can think of for starters, like, to actually start your turn going, because this here is really the starter, but all of this here, well, this is the problem card, but all of this here can get to Ash, right? And then, so this is why I think these two are the problem cards, and then this is like the actual issue, right? So these ones here are the things that do too much, and this one here is just the only reason why the deck does anything notable. Without these guys doing too much doesn't matter anymore, right? But their end board off of, let's say, a Wanted, right, is the Azamina Omni, Flamberg, IP into SP, Rabbit, Azarine, Field Spell, Princess, and Desiree. The Field Spell is hit or miss whether or not you keep it and have an extra body. I do know that in Fire King, they loop the Azamina Witch stuff, so they'll like send a card off of Witch to grab Deception. The Deception will tribute the Witch to summon the search for OSS. Then they bring back the Azamina or the hollowed Azamina by sending back the Azamina fusion from the field to the deck, right? And they just kind of leave everything in that little circle. But I also know that with like Rescue Ace and with this, they tend to use the bodies to go into Closed Moon. I use it to go into IP, but then these guys would use it to go into Closed Moon to get themselves Desiree before doing the rest of their combo. Because doing this combo to get to the Azamina Omni gets you to a normal summoned Ash, right? Off the wanted, you also get a draw. So you still have like 4 cards in hand at this point. Rabbit, which gets you the Azarune. This is also like a trap pop when this gets thing. This is a special summon negate. Princess is the pop engrave, and then Desiree is the Omni with the link attached to it, right? And so the combo is like, it's like normal Ash, grab pop summons, pop grabs field spell. You put Snake Eye Diabellstar in the back row. Ash send itself and Diabellstar, Snake Eye Diabellstar for Oak. Oak brings back the Ash. Oak and the field spell sometimes is what I've been seeing, but I've also seen people send the Ash, but we'll go the field spell for this, to bring out Flamberg. Then they link 2 into Closed Moon, which then gets them into the Desiree line, or they can end on Caesar if they have that line as well. It just depends on how they build their deck. Right, and then with that, once they've linked off into the Closed Moon, Poplar puts Snake Eye Diabellstar in the back row. Then once you get to your Desiree, your Caesar, I argue Caesar's better. You then just get to summon the Snake Eye forward, the Diabellstar forward, by putting Poplar in the back row, Ash in the back row. Link 2 into IP, sets off the Flamberg to bring back 2 more. Then you go into the Princess. Princess brings back Flamberg. Flamberg puts IP in the back row, and then you can end on like anything you want at this point. I've seen people end on Heater. I've seen people end on Raging Phoenix and end on Zelantis. It doesn't really matter at that point where they end. And that's off one card. That's off one card. The Rabbit and all this kind of stuff, I think, comes off of using like the Wanted line. But this is just off the normal summoned Ash, right? So you wouldn't have this, but you'd have like this, and this would be like Caesar or Desiree, right? It's too much. It's so much for one card to do that, once again, we're talking about playing into a full Ross here. If they full Ross you going second, right, and you decide to make a smaller board, like a half board, you don't get to beat this anymore. Like this one Ash, the moment they normal summon this Ash, I think about my regionals recently where I was playing against Freddy, and so I set up my board. It was like IP, it was SP Turbulent set 5, and we start playing back and forwards, and he plays really well. He's not a bad player in the slightest, right? But we go to a point where I'm like, surely this is it, right? Like I've exhausted most of his stuff. I've got like 2 things to do. I did mess up. It's fine. Like after this point, but it was Bonfire for game. So it was Bonfire into Poplar, and that got him to an OTK through a Turbulence and a Reinforced Protected Hydrant off of one Bonfire. I don't think he had anything on the board at this point, and that's just insane, right? Like that's just too much for a card to do, and cards like Full Ross shouldn't be able to enable this even more, right? We look at Bell. Dark Magnet Beast at 3. Dark Magnet Beast is a little harder to talk about because you really do need Samsara D Lotus in the open as well. But this here just extends the plays more. Throne at 4. I say 4 because you've got Terraforming. Nightmare Pain with Spirit can also get yourself started because you Nightmare Pain, pop the Spirit, then you add. And the Samsara D Lotus at 3, right? So Samsara D Lotus is the problem because that one card ends on everything you could want at all. Like literally, I'm pretty sure that one Samsara D Lotus uninterrupted ends on all of this. It ends on all of this, and it is such a long line. But once again, I think that's why I attribute it to being skillless, right? It's a single line that if you have a extender, you just get to keep going on the same line, right? Like it doesn't really deviate with 2 seconds of thinking going, can I get another body to board? If the answer is yes, the combo just continues, right? And then you still just end on all of this, right? It doesn't stop doing stuff. It doesn't deviate to the end board being like, oh, I'll just make a slightly different one to kind of do a bit different. No, you just get to keep going. But if you get stopped, say, 3 times, you just end on nothing. There's nowhere else to go anymore because the cards themselves, they're only used to start and extend. other than Phantom of Yubel, which does everything, like it extends and it's an interaction, these cards don't do anything on their own, you know what I mean? They do to add more and to add more and to add more. And that's not indicative to resource management in the end, which is what Yu-Gi-Oh! Is all about. Yu-Gi-Oh! Is big on resource management. And if the cards just do it themselves, what are you managing anymore? The deck just does it for you, and you just get to add a billion cards to hand, and it's all off one card. So if you do get stopped, you have 4 more cards in hand to probably continue on with the crap that you want to do. You know? Even we go into Tempai, right? So it's 3 Pydra, 3 Chandra. This is different because this is only an OTK. The issue, it's also just like the fact that every deck can OTK with 1 card now. That if you can bait out enough of your opponent's interactions, or in the case of Full Loss, deter them into making a half board, you use your 3 crappy cards that don't really do anything to bait out your opponent and stuff like that, right? Which, yes, there's a little bit of skill, but because the extra deck's 15 cards big and it's practically just a toolbox to just piss your opponent off, the moment you normal summon that Samsara D Lotus or that Ash, it's just like you may as well just scoop. Like, I've got nothing else. Continue, you know what I mean? We'll just go to the next game. So it's Tempai, it's 3 packs. So Pydra, Chandra, Kaiman, Dora technically as well because it adds the Chandra, and then 2 Sangin summoning 2 because of terraforming. All of this, bar this because you do need 1 discard, right, is game. All of this is game on its own, with these 2 being the biggest offenders, because Sangin, it's not Sangin summoning, sorry, Sangin summoning is a problem because you can't interact with your opponent's card through the main phase, which means that you can go into the 10 before even going to battle, which then just means that you just don't. So if you can get to the 10 before using Kaiman, because everything's a soft once per turn, you just get to find game and just have your opponent not be able to activate anything throughout the entire game, which is insane. Any card that says your opponent can't do stuff, go to hell. I don't understand why we do this to ourselves or why they've done this to us, where it's like, you just don't get to do anything. It's a 2-player game. Sure, limit me to a degree. Like, give me something to play around with and to work with and stuff. But don't just say, no, you don't get to. Right? So these are issues because, like, Chandra is the issue just because it can find game on its own, and then the real problems are Sang and Kaiman. With the same process of these cards where it's like, and the board breaker, just because the deck can just hoard board breakers. And like I said before, why I think Kaiman is just such a prick, right? It's just that you can literally just go like board breaker, board breaker, board breaker, board breaker, battle, Sangin, Kaiman, game. Like, it's brain dead. And then since Full Ross can be put in this deck as well, the chances of them seeing a Sangin, Kaiman, the chances of them seeing a Shifter, well, it's a bit different now, because not really, because you can't put the Shifter in the graveyard, but the chances of them seeing like Sangin, Kaiman, Hydra, any of their board breakers, any more hand traps to just stop you going, to end on a smaller board or low board, because your cards don't do anything. This is the inherent problem, I think, is that we have these powerful cards that go on forever and can lead to great things, but they don't do anything on their own if they're left alone. They're just sitting there like, oh, we're just stuck here, right? Which should be tiered, right? Like, you have starters which don't do anything on their own because they're meant to start everything, and then you should have like mid-range stuff that, when interacted with, should extend to some degree, potentially, and maybe it can do something. I look at like Preventer being a good one here, where if you interact with Preventer and send it to the graveyard, I get to extend a little bit and bring back another one. But also, it's a Book of Moon. You do need another Rescue Ace on the board, but he's a Book of Moon. He's not even really a boss. But he does a few cool little things, and Turbulence is kind of the same. He sets 4. Right? That's kind of nice. Only 2 of the cards do anything, really. But he's also got a pop tied to him. And the pop is reliant on your opponent doing something. Right? I think those are fair things to do. I think that's really, like, balanced. It's a balanced way of going. Okay, I bring this up here. Because this is what I put together for Rescue Ace. And unfortunately, I put all these here down as starters. They don't start on their own because you always need specifically a Rescue Ace name, which isn't guaranteed. The reason why I put these as like starters is because if you've got a Wanted in hand or a Witch in hand and you have to discard for Witch, you've got 4 other cards. Who cares what you get rid of, right? But in this case, for Hydrant to be a starter, because this whole stuff, no, not these two, but these three things here, these 9 cards, right? For these to be a 1-card combo, right, or to get me started, to get to my set 4, because that is the end board. The end board is probably SP, Turb, set 4. Pretty simple, right? But to get here, right, these need to be able to discard a Rescue Ace card. That's it. It just needs to be able to discard a Rescue Ace card, so then when I normal summon my Hydrant and add Turbulence, and then get my Hydrant off the board, I can then summon my Turb and set 4. That makes sense? I need specifically a Rescue Ace card. Lifter is a better starter. Lifter was actually a really good hit for the deck when it came down trying to make it fairer. We can have him back now, because even then, he doesn't do a whole lot on his own, because you still need another card to properly benefit off him, right? Because the combo would be normal Lifter, grab Emergency, play Emergency, right? Now, you summon Hydrant here, but if you want to end on SP Turb set 4, and that's it, like that's the bare minimum, right? Which is pretty good. Set 4, Turb, a few cards in hand, there'd be 3 cards in hand at the end of this, right? If you wanted to end on that, you would need another name in hand. So you wouldn't have to send the Lifter off of the Emergency Tribute, because it's not a free summon like it is for every other bloody deck. Every other deck just has add and summon, summon, with like no real repercussion. There's no management to your resources anymore, because the cards do it all themselves. And that's what I wanted to talk about. Because I was curious as to why no one else was talking about it, right? Everyone was just kind of bitching and complaining about, everyone was just kind of bitching and complaining about how much it cost, and, Yu-Gi-Oh's pay to win now. It's always been pay to win. If you pay more money, you have a better deck. If you put more time into it, which time is money, you will be better at the game, right? But I do think that the biggest issue that I have with these Molcharmy cards isn't necessarily so much like what they do. It's like, Max C's back in the game. I didn't play when Max C was in the game. It is a problem, but it's not a problem because, it makes you draw cards. It's a problem inherently because it makes you a dumber, crapper player. Because now terrible players can just cheat wins. This is the same argument with Floodgates. Do Floodgates belong in Yu-Gi-Oh? Yes and no. Right, because I think that everyone should have a chance to win, but when it comes down to going to a big event and there are people there that I know that aren't good at the game at all, and they're winning, and you're like, nope, that's not true, you didn't get any better, and I duel them, and the combo just runs itself. It's like an auto, like, if anyone remembers that Line Rider, and you got like the auto ride, where it sort of runs down on its own, and you don't even have to touch it, it just plays itself. That's what some of these decks are becoming, where the best decks are just brain dead, run one combo. If you get stopped, it's, too bad. Hopefully the 4 cards in hand will keep me alive, because I can run 17 hand traps in this deck. There's no skill involved anymore, and there's no resource management, which I think is the most integral part, like knowing what your opponent has, remembering what they've got, how to play around what your opponent has. They're the things that make the game interesting and make a player good, right? And if you get to start your turn with 10 cards in hand, you've just completely foregone the resource management aspect of the game, which is skill orientated. Being able to manage your resources is a skill. If you can't do it, like I said before, you can end on an IP set 1 pass and just screw up because you just completely negged. Like the old Yubel deck before the new version that they built right now, you could mess up your Yubel pops and just end on nothing. But with Phantom of Yubel out now, you can just shuffle everything back and kind of keep going and just end on stuff that's really hard to out. But you don't have to play the game. You just put card down and opponent have hard time because card too strong. It's brain dead, you know. So that's my opinion on Full Ross and why I truly think it's a problem. It takes skill out of the game. I just don't think that I just think that there are people who don't deserve the wins are now winning because they just get an entire aspect of the game handed to them, which is sequencing and resource management and yeah, and I just think it's kind of gone. So I think we're going to end on some hot takes. We're going to end on some hot takes because I just want to get it out to the open, but I don't think it's like a proper thing for a whole video. 1, called by needs to come back more. 2, fine. 3 would be great. The only issue I have with that is that because called by is currently such a staple in decks, like it's in almost every deck that you could see. I could be wrong though, like I really run through here. We can see, 60 card plants is a little hard. I mean, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe people just aren't playing called by. There's a called by. No called by. Yeah, you don't need called by in Tenpai. There's a called by. No called by there either. I mean, I love called by. I think it's great. I could be wrong. I think that's it though. Like if people aren't playing called by, bring it back. Bring back called by. And if you look at the OCG real quick, one card that I really want to come back, which the OCG has, is this one, Red Reboot. I think Red Reboot needs to come back. Because if we've got cards like this, especially this one, this is the one. I haven't even seen it that much, but just reading this it makes me super upset. Because once again, I think it's just brain dead. Because it's literally just like pure removal, and I think pure removal is like the bane of Yu-Gi-Oh! I think it should just be like limited to boss monsters, like stuff that's like actually hard to get out should have proper removal. Like if you look at, once again, I talk about Rescue Ace, there's one pop in the entire thing. In the entire thing, it's one pop. There's a Book of Moon, and then Extinguish is technically a pop too. But like I said, you need 2 cards. And so one pop is like your opponent has to do something, and the other pop is you need a Rescue Ace card, monster on field, to activate it. But when the other cards is like popping and popping and popping and just like crazy removal, it's just too much, right? And this year is just like one of the biggest removals you could do. It's Caesar. Caesar's a prick, right? So yeah, I think Red Ruby needs to at least come back to 1. I think called by to 2, especially because I'd play 2 every single time. I don't know if other people would. If I look at this, maybe they wouldn't. Because, I mean, the OCG is always playing their max amounts. Like, they're called by and cross out. So, yeah, I don't know. I think that's how I would play as well. Even with the... I don't play a lot of hand traps these days. But, yeah, I think that. And then I want to talk about... Because, like I said, I just did the regional the other day. And we talk about... cheat. Because these cards are going to exist, and bad players are going to be able to cheat wins because they just get to start with 10 cards in hand, or... they just get to like play into your opponent who just didn't get to draw any non-engine, right? And just get to build their crazy fucking FTK board and just go, you can't break it, dumbass, right? Then we need to reevaluate how our point systems work at these big events, even at locals. They do it at locals too. And I think the way to go is that you should be credited for every win that you do, right? With at least a point. And so the way that I see it is that I think, let's go back over here real quick. Right, and so the way that I think it should be done, right, I think that if you 2-0 someone, you get 3 points, right? Because this most likely means that you've won on the draw and you've won going first. Like, we've won going first and second most likely, right? I think you've won most likely going first and second. Now, if you 2-1 someone, right, you get 2 points. Okay, and they get 1 point. Right, and the reason why this is because this could just be like a die roll issue. You know what I mean? It could be, I just lost the die roll, so therefore I only had 1 chance to go first. So my opponent got to go first twice. So think about it, you win the die roll and go first, right? You build your crazy FTK board, they can't break it, you win. Go second, they build their crazy FTK board, you can't break it, they win. Game 3, exact same thing happens again. You get to go first, they can't break your board, you win, right? If that's the case, which 9 times out of 10 it is, because once again, the other one would be this one where you just get 2-0'd because they are just better than you, or they just drew better than you, they play better than you, they built better than you. But 9 times out of 10, when this happens, it's just a die roll issue, and it would have gone the other way if the other dude won the die roll, right? But so that dude who won that one should still get a point for this, because he still won a game, and then your 1-1s should still be 1 point for both persons, for both people, right? Because you both won a round, right? You both won a round. You both got to win one, you went to time, who cares? And then if you go 0-2, you suck, right? You shouldn't be getting 2-0'd. If you do get 2-0'd, like, there are bad matchups. I do say this, I did get 2-0'd at the regional. I was playing against Jack Sprunt. He was playing Pearly. Rescue Ace and Pearly are not a good matchup at all, because the moment Streak comes down, I can no longer target anything he's got. So, all my stuff targets. I don't know what you want me to do. Not to mention, I was planning more for you Bells and Snake Eyes and stuff like that, and like some Rogue stuff, because Rogue, my engine just beats anyway. And I wasn't prepared for... Yeah, I wasn't prepared for Pearly at all. So I got 2-0 in that one. It's going to happen sometimes. Sprunt deserves the 3 points on that one. I deserve nothing. But if I got 2-1, if I 2-1'd, if he 2-1'd me and I won one of my rounds, I deserve a point, I think, because I think it's a pretty hard matchup, right? But yeah, those are my hot takes on how I think where the game should kind of go. I don't really think it... For right now, anyway, I don't think it... Man, it's getting dark. I didn't realise it was getting so dark. That's crazy. You're going to see this in the video. That's cool. Yes, I don't think it can really change too from that. I talked way too long. I think this is kind of crazy how long I talked for. So yeah, if you have anything to say, please comment. I don't think I'm terribly wrong in saying what I'm saying. I have resigned myself to the fact that I will not own these cards properly. Like, I just spent, I think, $50 on a bunch of proxies for Impulse and Full Loss and Deception, because Snake Eyes will die soon. I'm a little tired of Rescue Ace, and I see no reason to play these properly until the YCS, which I don't even think I'm going to. So by the time I actually get to go to a big event, because once again, I am in Australia, we get one YCS a year, we get a one regional per quarter, and our OTSs are scattered on weekends where I tend to work. So what are you gonna do about it, you know? Anyway, please let me know your thoughts in the comments below, just to get some engagement on what we're talking about, because I think it's actually kind of important to at least see what the rest of the community in Yu-Gi-Oh! Is thinking as well. If they agree with me, maybe hopefully I've opened some eyes that it's not just a money issue we're thinking of here. It's not so much a Saki card, but I think it's just making players too comfortable, and there's no real reason to get good anymore, because the cards just kind of play themselves now. So yeah, and I'll see you later.